It is 11:04. Now, this time of year, as the weather turns colder and there's people having their Christmas celebrations on a Saturday night or whatever night of the week it is, we're a lot more social this time of the year. It's kind of counterintuitive because it's cold out, but heck, we were out for a Christmas dinner last night because there's only so many days in the week that you can do this. And as tempting as it may be to take one of those, what we like to call mental health days, you can't if you're not sick. You can't just say, oh, you know what, I was really out late last night, and I'm just not coming in today. The best line I ever read, there was an article in one of the Washington newspapers years ago about the favorite excuses for not coming to work from civil servants that they'd ever heard. And there was a postal worker in Washington, D.C., who left a message on his boss's phone that said, I can't come in today. The voices have told me to clean my guns. And I thought that was hilarious. How do you argue? Do you send a subpoena to the voices in the guy's head? Clearly, he got the day off. CareerBuilder.com did a survey that found in the past year 30% of workers called in sick when they're not. Sick days, legitimate or otherwise, become more frequent around the holiday season. Nearly 1/3 of employers surveyed reporting more employees call in sick during the holiday season. So what can an employer do about that? Stuart Rudner joins us, an employment lawyer. I'm glad you didn't phone it in today, Stuart. As tempting as it might have been.
Well, for all you know, I could be sitting in my home right now.
Well, that's true. That's true. A lot of people could, if you work from home, you never get to phone it in. You just don't. What are there real and finite penalties for this? Because how does an employer tell? How do you know?
It's tough. I work with a lot of employers, and one of the things that you mentioned earlier is people use sick days for all kinds of reasons. They're tired because they were out late. They have to take their kids to a doctor's appointment, whatever it is, and that's why a lot of employers now don't even bother with sick days. They offer personal days, so you can use it for a variety of different reasons, although I advise employers to specify what those reasons may be, and it's not just the mental health day or I was out drinking last night and I'm not up to getting out of bed this morning. But employers should define exactly what employees are allowed to do. And one of the misconceptions out there is the belief that everyone is entitled to days off when they're sick, and that's not the law in Ontario.
What is the law?
Of the law, the default is that you are supposed to be at work, and if you don't come into work, you won't get paid, and if you do it too often, you won't have a job anymore. The only exception is a fairly recent change to the Employment Standards Act, which provides for personal emergency leaves, and that's only for employers with more than 50 employees, and in that case, they have to offer 10 days a year for various personal emergencies, like I said. Otherwise, there's no automatic right to a day off, and certainly not a right to a day off with pay.
And just because you've never taken any sick days, that's still not a reason. You can't say, Bob's taken 5 days off this year. I don't have any, so I'm just not going to come in on Monday. That doesn't make any sense at all.
It definitely doesn't make any sense. And unfortunately, there's so many people that abuse the concept of sick days or personal days, and that's why employers have to clamp down, and that's where I tend to get involved is helping the employers to deal with that.
And what are the real consequences? Can you be dismissed for this?
You absolutely can, but I'll focus on the word can. I mean, when it comes to just cause for dismissal or summary dismissal, there are no hard and fast rules. So you can pick any misconduct you want, taking a day off when you're not sick, threatening a colleague, threatening your boss, lying, stealing, whatever it is. The courts will always say you don't just look at what the person actually did. You have to look at the whole context. How long have they been there? Have they been in trouble before? Have they been warned about this type of conduct? All of these things, and then you assess whether some lesser form of discipline is appropriate, a suspension, a warning, or whether they can be fired. But if you do this too often, and if you're lying, which destroys the trust that an employer is entitled to have in their employee, then you can be dismissed for cause. And if that happens, first of all, you don't get notice or severance, and second of all, you probably won't get employment insurance benefits either.
And you're not going to get much of a letter of recommendation.
You're not going to get much help finding a new job either way.
Yeah.
One of the things I often tell our employer clients, every employer has a different policy, or at least should have their own policy, on how you deal with sick days. And for whatever reason, the practice has developed where the standard policy I see says if you're absent for 3 or more days, we are entitled to a doctor's note. And I always tell our clients, that's not going to catch, that everyone knows a guy like this who tends to be sick every Friday before the long weekend. And if you have a policy that says you only have to bring a note after 3 days in a row of absence, you're not going to catch that guy. So what I always tell our employer clients to do is reserve discretion. Say, we have the right to require a doctor's note for any absence that we deem fit to request one for.
So if you're an employer and you're suspicious, is it a good bet, Stuart, if an employee phones in sick and it's Wednesday that they're legitimately sick, but if it's Friday or Monday, you may want to scratch your head on that one?
Well, and I have employers who have actually, they have somebody who understands statistics better than I do, and they've actually studied and looked at individual departments and individual employees, and they'll see a pattern develop where they're always absent on a Friday or a Monday. Or in one case, which I thought was fascinating, a large company, and it became very clear that a department had just picked weeks. So John got this week off, and Joe got that week off, and they just did that informally amongst themselves.
Wow.
So, which to me is just shocking on many levels. But the point is that we all know that there are some absences, and sometimes we see colleagues who are not at work, and you just have that gut reaction that it may not be legitimate.
Well, I get this feeling there's one day at least Rob Ford wished he'd phoned in sick.
Because
there's
I
some
don't
bad
think a doctor's note's going to help there.
Doctor's note's not going to help. No, not at all. So I guess the best advice, and I know you're a lawyer, so you're just going to stick to the lines here, but the best advice is if you're sick, stay home. If you're not, go to work.
And I'll add to that, if you're sick and you stay home, call your employer.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's amazing how many clients call me and say, you know what, Joe didn't show up today, and he wasn't here yesterday, and we're calling his home, we're calling his cell phone, we get his voicemail, and we just can't find him. It's this disappearing employee epidemic that I see more and more of lately.
Well, you can't phone, as far as I know, you can't phone in hungover, you can't phone in bored, and you can't phone in tired, because in a lot of cases, a lot of us who are in working are suffering from all three, or are working through all three issues.
Unfortunately, that's the case. But you know what?
Yeah.
The fundamental basis of your employment contract is that you come to work and you get paid.
This also comes right down, Stuart, to work ethic. This comes down to people that want to work and people that don't want to work, I think.
It absolutely does. And people who are legitimately sick should stay home, get a doctor's note, tell their employer as early as they can. But if you're not and you're just looking for a day to rest or catch up on your Christmas shopping, that's not an appropriate reason to take a day off.
Always good to chat. Thanks for this.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye. Stuart Rudner is an employment lawyer. We've all heard the phrase mental health day. You know what? That's actually not on the books. There's no such thing in the employer code of conduct that says you're entitled to X number of mental health days. Now, a number of employers have figured it out, and now they allow what Stuart calls personal days. Those are the days where you can, you schedule it. You don't phone somebody on a Saturday night at midnight and say, I'm not coming in Monday. You tell them the Thursday or the week before, hey, I am booking next Monday. I have to look after a lot of stuff. That's legitimate. But to call it a sick day is not. Here's some of the more bizarre excuses employees gave for taking a sick day, according to the survey done at careerbuilder.com. And please tell me you like these, because I just think these are hilarious. But if you actually had the nads to phone your boss and say this, I'm sure from wherever you were, you could hear his or her eyes rolling while you were talking. If you think you got away with this one, how about this? My sobriety tool won't allow the car to start. I love that. I forgot I'd been hired for the job. My dog was having a nervous breakdown. My dead grandmother is being exhumed for police investigation. My toe is stuck in a faucet. Oh, I love that one. A bird bit me. I was just too upset. I watched the Hunger Games last night. And I got sick because I read too much. I love those. Do you know people that phone it in? That just take these mental health days? And how does that affect the rest of the workplace? Because if Bob phones in sick, don't you pick up the slack? And therefore, do you not then, when Bob comes back, do you not want to take a mental health day and have Bob pay the penalty of having to pick up the slack too? I don't see how that ever works for business. And I don't know anybody that phones it in or takes a mental health day on a Wednesday. If you're taking a Wednesday off, you're probably sick. Back in a minute. This is 5-7.